Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed the intro music as much as I did. I've just found out it existed on the last episode. So thanks for that, Brandon. The offer is still there to bring out the bass guitar and do something original, but hey, what have you been up to hobby this week?
Well, I should also tell you, I guess this is going to be a recurring segment now where you don't actually listen to the intro and then, we get into it. But the
have
intro
you got rid of the
usually
intro
kicks in.
music?
No, the intro usually kicks in after we say, welcome to the podcast. So it should be playing right about now.
Welcome to the Winged Hussar Pubcast. From fantasy to sci-fi to history and horror, your hosts are about to take you on a journey through all things Winged Hussar publishing. Sit back and relax as we talk about writing, gaming, as well as interview some of your favorite authors. Let's wing it.
Well, I enjoyed that intro music.
So, right, what was your question?
Hobby stuff before we bring in, because we got a guy waiting on the wings. But before we bring it in, just a little bit of light wit and repartee, gentle stretching to warm up. What's been going on in the crazy world of Brandon in terms of hobby, by which I mean anything wargaming or writing and editing?
Well, I have gotten my wife into miniatures and collecting and painting and all that, and she built a shelf for all of our Infinity and Borderlands and Cyberpunk miniatures and et cetera, the miscellaneous that's not my giant wall of Marvel United miniatures, and that is now hanging in our bedroom with, about 100 miniatures on it, so that's a cool thing. And I have been still chipping away at Marvel United, started chipping away a little bit more at Infinity, busy writing and busy editing, but I am also in the middle of putting a pitch together for a potential Kings of War novel down the line of some interesting stuff that's been discussed. Mark, you and I have discussed that, but I've been just busy. How about yourself?
Well, I think our guest is going to be pretty interested to hear that, if he didn't know already, because he knows a lot of stuff already, as I find out. For me, tiny bit of blood and plunder painting, a lot of writing. I got an editor breathing down my neck in a very American way, so I got to get a novel done. So I have set myself 1,000 words a day minimum, which I'm largely achieving. I think the most I've done in the last week is 4,000 in a day. But as we know, it's quantity, not quality. That's the name of the game, so that's been me. But I'm going to bring our guest in now. So we did an episode a little while back, our first Pannithor episode, which I can't remember if you thought of that or if we ripped that off someone else, but I think it's great. And this is very much Pannithor-y. This is a Kings of War one. So, without further delay, we've got Dave with us, Wiki Dave. So, for a bit of an intro, could I impose upon you to give us your origin story? How did you go from being a normal, well-adjusted kind of guy into the oracle of Kings of War lore?
Well, hey guys, thanks for inviting me on to the #1 Beatles-hating podcast. I know you guys hate the Beatles.
Don't you do that to me. Don't you do that to me.
You said it. You guys said you're not fond of the Beatles. I mean, I'm pretty sure the last episode that you're going on about that. So, I mean, you guys put
Mark
it out
was.
there,
No. I said I respect the Beatles and I enjoy a majority of their tracks.
I'll own it.
But they're not my favorite.
I don't hate them, but there is a lot of bands I prefer to them, definitely. So I'll own that. Yeah, you can blame me, definitely.
Oh God,
Vince will disassociate me from the rest of the company. I don't think you understand how big of a Beatles fan he is. So if we get that label on here, I guess you guys are getting a new editor.
Now,
yeah,
I have someone in my family who has been giving me abuse for the music I listen to. So not as good as the Beatles though. And so I looked it up. I looked it up on Google, which, as we know, cannot lie. And the Beatles, it's an urban myth that, according to a Google search, which took me 5 seconds, so it must be true, the Beatles aren't even in the top 10 albums of all time in terms of selling. They're top 20.
I'm pretty sure
but
Michael
they're not top
Jackson
10.
would be, right?
Michael Jackson's number 1. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I used to be a manager of a music store, so I know stuff.
Wow. Yeah, you know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of stuff. Anyway, so the origin story. I don't know how to start this. I was born in 1987, and what happened in 1987 when I was born defective, but I wouldn't find that out until 2023. So I went a long time with having what they call a bicuspid valve. So in your heart, you typically have 3 valves. I was born with only 2. So for my entire life, my heart had been basically going faster than everybody else's and kind of working a little bit harder. And the reason why I mention that is in December 2023, the 20th of December 2023, I had some shortness of breath. And so I went in for an x-ray. And they found a blood clot around my heart, and one thing led to another, and they found out I was in critical heart failure, and I was pretty much, this won't mean a lot, but my EF was at 11%, so that's basically how good my heart was going, and basically it was slowly shutting down. And the reason why I mention that is this is kind of how all this wiki stuff started, because when this all happened, we didn't have a lot of time to pack anything. Most people that are in heart failure, it's something that happens over a period of time, so they're able to kind of like get all their stuff together when they have to actually leave to go to Auckland in New Zealand, because everything happens up north in Auckland when it comes to these heart problems. So we had about, I think, 5 hours to pack everything, all the gear that we needed, and then we went on an emergency flight from Wellington, New Zealand, all the way up to Auckland. It's like a 12-hour drive if you were to drive it, but the flight took like an hour. And so once we landed, all I had was a phone and a really bad working laptop that I couldn't play any games on it. So while I was stuck in hospital, I got very, very bored, and I decided to finally do something that I had been putting off for a while, which is get into Kings of War and actually start planning doing some modeling, because I had put it off for so long. But unfortunately, because I can't do modeling while I was sitting in a hospital bed, I found the Pannithor free lore PDF, and I started reading through that. And as I read through that, I noticed halflings, and halflings was an army that I actually always wanted to build when I was playing fantasy battles in Warhammer. But they had never released it. I know they've released some halfling models, but they never actually did a full-fledged army to collect. And that I saw that, and I read a little bit more into that, and then I got Broken Alliance, that book, and I read through that book the entire time I was there in the hospital. And I read it from cover to cover. And I loved it, and I loved the lore, and something triggered in my brain of, are gnomes real in Pannithor as well? Because in D&D you can get halflings and you can get gnomes, and it felt very D&D as I was reading the book in terms of the kind of world that it was based in. So I went on the wiki and I looked for it, and I couldn't find the answer of whether gnomes actually existed in Pannithor. And so I did my own research, and I started updating the wiki, the fandom wiki, that is, before I actually built my own. That's how obsessive I got with this. And I just started updating the wiki all over the place. So I found out gnomes did exist. They do exist, but they are small, very, very small, and they're grey as well. So I think that they're very small grey creatures in the world of Pannithor. But yeah, that one thing led to another, and I went a bit crazy when you're sitting in the hospital bed with nothing to do, with people that are basically got 10, 20 years on you, because I'm only 37 or 30. Or 30. How old was I? I was 36 at the time. So a lot of people were very much older. They had families coming in all the time, and I just had myself and my partner who came in, and she was great. She went through the ringer for the whole thing and turned up every day for me. But at the end of the day, when the visitors have to leave and you got nothing to do, pretty much that's what I did. I just did the wiki stuff, and one thing led to another, and now I'm fully invested into the Pannithor lore. I know more about the lore than I do about playing the game. I still haven't played a game of Kings of War yet. Which is quite funny. But I really, it kind of tickled that that itch that I had been looking for a very, very long time. And this whole event that I went through kind of pushed me forward and got me to do something I'd been putting off for a while. And it did remind me of when I was a teenager, collecting Warhammer, and Pannithor or Kings of War is closer to what I wanted Warhammer to be than what actually Warhammer was. And I think it's got so much potential in terms of where it can actually narratively go. It also has got so much potential of filling the void for so many people that are looking for, building the perfect army, or the army that they want, and be able to slot it in somewhere in this world without it needing to be fan fiction or anything like that. And it's just got so much potential. Obviously with anything you're passionate about, there's always also the negative that you have to admit it does exist. But ultimately, it's been an interesting journey. So I've moved on from the fandom wiki, which were just flooded with ads. I decided to build my own wiki, so at kingsofwarwiki.com. I have to also thank everyone that actually helped build that wiki as it was when I came along, because obviously they set the foundations, and I did nick a few of those things and moved it to the new wiki that I'm building there. But ultimately, that's kind of the summary of the origin story. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened, like I got meningococcal septicemia when I was 7 in England, which they apparently found bicast valve at that time on my medical records, but they never transferred it over to New Zealand, so no one actually did anything about it. And there's a bunch of other stuff. I've owned a bar, I've been a manager of a music store, and a lot of other stuff. But that's the general kind of origin story for you there, Mark.
And that's how you've earned the nickname of Wiki Dave, is because of how involved you've been on all this. And as somebody who uses it very frequently in the editing process, I can vet how good it is, because I love wikis on any type of media, and it's one thing to be able to open up a PDF, but sometimes they take a long time, and when I'm looking for something, Control Find works most of the time, but not all the time. So I'll usually have the lore book open and the wiki open just to make sure the answer is exactly what I'm looking for. So it's legit. I can say that honestly.
Yeah, I think I hated the fandom one just because of the ads, and apparently it's only going to get worse. So a lot of people a lot of wikis that you use the fandom wikis, they've moved away from it, because the Kings of War wiki, the one I had, so kingsofwarwiki.com, it runs off a media wiki source code. So that's the same one Wikipedia runs off. So it's got no ads. I'm not intending to put in ads. All of it comes off my own dime. I've also built Warpath wiki now, so I think warpathuniversewiki.com, and also manticgameswiki.com, which has all the Halo stuff and all the other stuff that's kind of outside of the Warpath and Pannithor universes as well. So I just hated the ads. I think the ads were just especially on mobile, it just wasn't really working for people. That it was just flooded with it. So it's definitely a tool to get people invested, especially newcomers, because when you're coming to something as big as Pannithor, if you don't have a really good way of catching up, it's going to be a little bit daunting, and you're never going to actually dip your toes in that world enough, and you're going to either stick to just the game itself or just not pay too much attention on how the lore evolves and changes. So that's the whole idea of it, is to give people a really easy access point for them to just find what they care about in terms of lore, because everyone's different in terms of what they actually care about. And I just hope to help with that, really.
Well, what a positive way of doing it, dude. I'm going to take one rung back on that, because your initial answer, a million things to unpack. I'm not going to put you on the spot and embarrass you, but it would be criminal. It would be criminal not to at least make a reference to what a positive way to kind of face something so difficult. And you've done a ton of good stuff for the community. Absolutely fantastic. Whilst facing something that none of us can even comprehend how difficult it is. I won't bleat on any more than that, because I know it's going to kind of, put you in a weird position. So but wow.
That's right.
What a story. What a story.
Like, ultimately, it's just me ignoring the problem. This is all it is. It's just me just trying to pretend the problem doesn't exist by using some other vice. And, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. That mentally is not going to come back and catch up with me at all. It's fine.
I mean, yeah, you and I have got that in common. I do that with the editing process, and just that you're facing mortal peril. I'm facing being shouted at a lot, but it's. Yeah.
I should end the story actually. So ultimately, they did surgery on me. They plugged in what we call an LVAD, which is a left ventricle assisted device, which basically does the left side function of my heart because my right side. My heart is dead. There's a lot of stuff that's dead on my heart, and they can't save it, and I need a heart transplant. We should just end it right there, because that's where I currently am right now. Is that I'm technically in critical heart failure, waiting for a heart transplant, which in New Zealand could happen at any single time. I'm not allowed to actually post on social media when it happens, so when it happens, I'll just vanish, and then if 3 hours later, if I'm still alive and I wake up 2 days later, I'll let everyone know what happened, but. Yeah, that's currently where I sit. So I'm not completely out of the woods yet, so I am still using the wiki as a vice to ignore the problem, but yeah, that's where I sit.
Well, I'm sure I'm speaking for a ton of us here when I say best of luck with it, honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
if you didn't say that, you'd be kind of a...
Yeah. I am anyway. But
yeah,
both. I mean, I'm saying it and I am kind of a... Right.
Now, what's your segue out of this awkward moment?
It's tricky, isn't it? I may double back to the Beatles. Not sure. You've kind of answered.
What's worth hating the Beatles or critical heart failure?
I mean, it's like I don't hate the Beatles, but we've made such a big thing about it now. I want to own that and say I hate them. I mean,
there we go. That's a soundbite for you.
Yeah.
There you go. Mark said it first. He hates the Beatles.
Yeah, you heard it here. Yeah, White Album, massively overrated.
Whoa! Now you're saying
AC/DC.
things that I don't know if you can backpedal on.
Yeah, that's rough. That's real rough.
I mean, yeah, but AC/DC have outsold them, so awkward. Anyway, I'm going to move on before I get things thrown at me from like other corners of the world. I was going to kind of dive into why Kings of War, but I think you've kind of already answered it. So I'll dig a little bit deeper into, what about Kings of War? Different things leap out to different people about, assuming you're invested in the lore kind of thing. But what factions? There's, I think. At the time we're recording this, Kings of War, in terms of tournament legal factions, currently has 837. So out of those factions...
No, it's 836.
Oh, yeah, they did. They amalgamated too. You're right.
No, because a lot of people count Noble Undead as a faction, and I've had it on good authority from Matt Gibbs that technically it's not a faction.
Which of those factions, then, have leapt out amongst the others that have grabbed your imagination, your attention? Which factions are you a fan of? You've already mentioned one. What else do you like?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that I like. I had my eye on Kings of War for a while because I always wanted to get back into modeling, but I think I just got burnt out with a lot of that toxicity that you get from fantasy battles and them nuking that game and everything. That I didn't really click that it's a completely different verse and kind of it won't be the same. So I had my eyes on Kings of War for a while. So Free Dwarfs were basically the other faction that really jumps out at me. I really like the idea of dwarfs and free dwarfs and them being two separate factions. And the more you learn about the lore, you realize how different they are. And also, the more lore that I dived into and looked at the back history of all the different supplements, the more you realize that they had always planned for Free Dwarfs to be its own faction all the way from second edition. Free Dwarfs only became their official faction in about third edition, I think, with Uncharted Empires, I think, with that supplement. But they had been mentioning the Free Dwarfs for a while. So it was something that they had been cooking for a bit. And then you realize there's a lot of factions that they cook for a while before they release it. Now, there's a few future stuff that they keep on hinting at as well in the supplements through third edition, but a lot of it, but that was another faction that really jumped out at me that I really love. And that what is kind of triggered the whole Kings of War really can be a game where anyone can build the army of their dreams. If you want hippie knights that love, or Greenpeace knights, and ones that really love nature, you got the Order of the Green Lady. If you want a more militaristic kind of army and ones that, you know, by the book fighting the forces of evil, you got the Order of the Brotherhood, Brother Mark, I should say. But if you do want a more a faction that is more religious based, that loves gods and, you know, honors them, you got the Basileans. I don't know. It doesn't even seem like Ronnie even knows how to say Basilean. I don't even know how
Nobody
effective
does.
Be careful.
is, but
Yeah, nobody
Be careful.
knows.
It's subject of content.
yeah, it is. I think the audio, there was like the Steps of Deliverance, and the audiobook says it oddly as well, but I don't know. It's a contentious thing, but either way, the point is that there's so many factions that kind of fit everyone's void, and I think that's so. I would say all of them jump out to me to the fact of that it's an option for everybody, and there's always going to be a faction that kind of would fit what you're looking for. Now, whether that's the case in the future, not sure, because, you know, 4th edition is rumored to be coming. And there is rumors that some factions will be culled, which a lot of people aren't looking forward to, because they feel like, you know, if you cull a faction, it kind of takes away a very key, unique factor of Kings of War, which, you know, if anything, Kings of War needs more uniqueness rather than take it away. So, yeah, I would say if halflings, free dwarfs, and I don't know, all the factions I've grown to like in a certain regard. I probably couldn't describe every faction for you in its own unique way. I'm trying to think, what would be another one? Trident Realm. I would say Trident Realms is a good one that probably has the most potential out of all of them that haven't really been explored to the best of its ability. So how about those three there?
Yeah,
But I like
cool.
all of them, let's be honest.
Okay. Well, that's going to make the next question a little bit more difficult. Which is,
Oh,
you know,
God.
we
All
want
right.
to try and focus on the positives as much as we can. You always do, because, you know, a ton of creative effort goes into this from a ton of people. But not everything is going to work for absolutely everyone. And just part of life, isn't it? So, out of those 830 factions, which ones grip you a little bit less? Which ones aren't your favourites? And if you had, you know, the power of a shining one, what would you do to spice them up a bit?
Ooh, I think Retcon Slaves is one. I think that one, the idea was solid, but it just, they didn't commit to it. I think Retcon Slaves should be more of an army of slaves rather than just, you know, abyssal dwarfs with slaves. I think they really could have made a unit of slaves that just incorporated all the other factions. Like, you could have salamander slaves, human slaves, or, you know, you already got orc slaves in there. You already got Retcon slave, but halfling slaves. Just basically make that basically a slave army that belonged to the abyssal dwarfs. I think from a aesthetic point of view, they could have done that. If you're talking from a pure lore point of view, probably salamanders is the one that I would want more for. That seems a little bit lackluster at the moment. It's got a good setup. It's got the Three Kings, which is their homeland. They've got a good origin story with I don't know how to say her name, but it starts with a K, ends with a Q. Kwalik or something like that.
I just went
So
literally Thorlak. I think
maybe
Thorlak.
I think it starts with a K though. So I'm trying to. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Basileia. Basilia.
Basilia, yeah. Either way, I think Salamanders is one faction that, from a lore point of view, I want them to do more, because I think it could be really interesting, because they are at the moment defined as a good faction, but you don't really know why they're good. They're just listed as good. The closest thing I could say about them, they're basically the police on the sea. Is that they keep everyone in check and take on the pirates, and they sail through the infancy, making sure everyone is kept in check. And I think that's the best I could say about Salamanders. But there's definitely a lot of stories there that could be told a little bit more. What other one? I want to say 3, because 3 is a good solid number. I would say the difference between orcs and Riftforged orcs. I think I like the as I said with the dwarf example, is that I kind of like them taking a known faction and kind of splitting them up and giving them their own personality. So I really like Riftforged Orcs and Orcs being two separate things. With Riftforged Orcs, the whole story of them is that they were in the Abyss and the Harpies Rift exploded, and then 2 years later these newly formed orcs were released upon the world, and the Abyss goes at a different time rate than the rest of the world. So when the Riftforged Orcs were created, it was only 2 years on the surface, but in the Abyss, hundreds of years had passed. So these were really battle-hardened orcs and militaristic orcs that were released upon the world and just savaged the world and went crazy in the Shires and tried to defeat them. But in the end, the halflings won. But ultimately, that's why those orcs are so much different than the other orcs, which they were basically created 3,800 years earlier for the God War. The God War, which is the Wicked Ones, they were shoved down to the Abyss, but then these orcs were kind of left for their own vices on the surface, and they were basically just, what happened from that point? They developed their own culture, they ended up being slaves for the Abyssal Dwarfs at some point, a lot of them, and some of them escaped, but they ultimately could become their really own thing, trying to find their own place in the world. They obviously have their own they're on the waves now, they have their own ships. And I think it would be really interesting to see what happens when you just leave orcs to their own vices. They're not owned or controlled by a god. What happens when they're just left alone? And so I like the idea of we got some orcs that are servants of the Wicked Ones, and then we got these other orcs which aren't that loyal. Some would still be loyal. Some still honor their creators, but ultimately kind of are branching away and trying to find their own place in the world. And I really like that idea. I just don't know whether Mantic want to commit to that idea. I think they should, because I think it'll be very unique and it'll be very different, especially from the WAG of the Warhammer ones and the Lord of the Rings orcs, which, once Sauron actually died, it sounded like the orcs just all died off as well. So, I mean, I think it would be a really different, unique angle for that. So there you go. There's three that I think they could do a lot better with. More lore kind of centric than anything else.
Interesting. Very interesting. It's almost as if somebody, I wonder who could potentially write more about salamanders. I mean, salamanders have featured in somebody's novels in the past, but I don't know who. Maybe there's going to be some more salamander writing in the future. We'll have to see.
You publish them. Don't do this. You did this on my podcast. Don't do that. That information. There's no point teasing it, and then you're treating the audience like they don't know. I mean, you got something cooking.
Well, that's the cue up for Mark to be like, oh, gee, I wonder who could be possibly writing about that.
Wow, is that your? Oh, okay. I'll leave this be.
Was that a Beatle impression? I mean, was that Ringo? I don't even know what that was, but yeah, I don't know. There was something about novels and salamanders. I don't know. I was feeding the Diet Pepsi addiction. Not an advert. They don't sponsor us. So. Yeah.
You do mention
there's more stuff coming.
Hero Falling. Yeah, and I think in Hero Falling you mention probably the most we've actually heard about the Three Kings, just in terms of what the islands are called in a particular location. I think that's the most we've actually got for Three Kings. They're very cagey about that lore, and I'm not sure why, because I think salamanders are such an interesting faction that could be explored.
Stay tuned for more.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Quick, cut me off before I say something.
No, I'm not going to do that. You know. Okay, guys, updating the lore takes time. If you don't give me the information straight up, I have to spend hours searching for the information. So, I mean, let's not mess around with the information you could give me.
All right, yeah. Post this podcast, in a few months' time, maybe next year, maybe 5 years from now. I don't know when stuff's coming out. We'll just have that discussion.
I'm on the heart transplant list, so I may not have that long, Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon. Jeez.
I'm just going to use my condition for my favor. That's all. Just while I can.
Moving on to the next question. Let's talk about the novels a little bit. We've talked a great deal about novels. It's almost like, we write and edit and publish novels here. Dave, what is more important to you as a reader, not being directly involved in any of this process? When you're reading the books, do you enjoy more of the world-building aspects? Do you enjoy reading it purely for the plot? Or what about well-developed characters? What draws you the most? I know it probably a little bit skewed because you do edit the wiki, you manage the wiki, so, the world building is real key, I know, for what you do. But as just a pure reader perspective, what's the most important for you?
It's hard to say what's the most important because they all play a factor into the whole equation, right? You can't really have a really good world building without good character development. Otherwise, it's just a really boring. It's just an encyclopedia at that point. So, I mean, the most important. That's a really hard one. I don't think I could say. I mean, world building is important, and I think if we put it in the shoes of a franchise, and when I'm talking about this, I'm not just talking about Kings of War or Warhammer. I'm talking about like Halo. I mean, Halo was the first franchise book a tie-in book that I ever read. It was Fall of Reach when back when I think 2001 is when I actually read that. It's actually the first time I actually started building my own wiki is with Halo. But ultimately, world building is so important, and novels are a very unique way of building on stuff you can't show otherwise. So there's a lot in the Halo games. There's a lot in Kings of War that you can't just show on the table or show in the core product, right? So the world building, especially if you go to the Broken Alliance as a good example of how they built their towns. So one of the big ones is that they built the towns in big circles because that's how they traveled when they were nomadic, when they traveled a lot from place to place. They would set up their caravans as a big circle. And so over time, after the halflings settled in the Shires, they built their towns out to be that. So you got circles on circles on circles of how they kind of built out the towns. And that you will never get on the tabletop. You'll never get that anywhere else in the game when you're just reading it through. You may get it on a brief line in one of the supplements, but you will never really get enough of that detail. It will be very glossed over. So novels is a very good way of showing that aspect of it and helping build the overall culture of the particular faction that you follow. So world building is definitely important. I would say that would be number one, but all that doesn't. You won't even care about all that if you haven't done all the character development. You haven't done any of that plot to lead that up to organically. Otherwise, it just it's not an interesting story because the story still needs to be interesting at the end of the day. Otherwise, you're not going to get past chapter 1. You'll be bored. So that's going to be my answer because there's no way I could really make that a perfect answer because it's a hard one.
That's fair.
Okay, dude. Let's dive a little bit deeper into what you think of the novels and where they should go. So, imagine the scenario. It's realistic. It's a realistic scenario, which is going to be the theme of a lot of my questions. So, in a horrific turn of events, you wake up tomorrow to find yourself suddenly the creative director of Winged Hussar Publishing's fantasy IP lines. How would you drive the lore development of Kings of War forwards using the medium of novels? What would you change from this point?
Okay, so the question is, will these actions actually take place? Because, I mean, there's only so much to know that Brandon can actually do.
Brandon is completely out of ideas and told me to ask you this because we've got nothing, dude. We've got nothing. So what do we do from here?
Keep in mind you have to answer to Mantic about making sure everything does make sense and keep in line with what they want. Keep in mind.
Okay, let's assume that they will agree with everything I say because I do know at the end of the day they are a business and they have their own ideas and own direction and where they want to take things. And ultimately you have to make sure that they're happy because they are essentially the ones that own the IP. And they've got their own ideas of what they want to achieve over the next few years, and you want it to align with that. So let's just assume that what I'm about to say aligns with that vision that they have, because that's ultimately whatever you create needs to align with what they want. First of all, I would make sure that there is a timeline. So timelines, I don't understand why businesses or IPs, I should say, don't put timelines in their books or when they're kind of trying to set the scene. Because if you ask me right now what year it is in Pannithor lore, I would not be able to tell you. I would not be able to tell you when the last few events have happened. Like there was Shadow Horizons, which was the last big campaign event they had. The most recent Clash of Kings book, which is the Deepwater Crusade. Wouldn't be able to tell you what year that occurs. The last year we've had was the Storm of the Shires, and that was 3,868, if memory serves me right. So with the last event of us actually knowing the time of the Storm of the Shires, the first thing I do is sit down and work out the actual timeline of when all the big events happened, and to be a little bit more accurate, because I think that's a good entry point for anyone coming into the lore to understand where we're at with the story. It also will open the door to be able to tell past stories as well if people want to go back in time. And I think a good example was the Rise of Celestian story, and it's going to be the Fall of Celestians would be the next one, and that tells the Smashing of the Mirror and then the Shining and the Wicked Ones separating out. That's going to tell that story. I think that's coming out shortly, Brandon. I'm not sure what the timeline is with that, but ultimately set the timeline and basically open the door for those stories in the past to be told, but also in the future. So I would love for someone to write a story about some of the Dungeons & Dragons characters. And I know, Mark, you've touched on some of them, but I think a lot of those characters that still have a lot of stories to tell, like Kapoa. I think the Glade Walker. I think he could have a really interesting story. I would love to see the Halfling stories to be told. Melissa Padfoot, and what was the other one? Melissa Sween, I think it is, her name is, or something like that. Because they're cousins of each other. So, and one of them grew up on the streets of Valencia. I think that would be a really cool story. So I would try and get some of those stories told, and perhaps even start it as a comic book origin form as well. So you have a 4-issue comic book run of individual characters of showing their origin story, kind of similar to what Critical Role have done with their origins. So I would really love something like that, and to make sure the door is always open to tell these past smaller stories, not world defining stories, but these little stories that you could tell. I would also love a novel to be told about the League of Roidina. I think a really cool story would be kind of not really an anthology series, but kind of an anthology series just about the League of Roidina, of all their major events throughout history. So you got the founding of I think it was the Battle of Halligan's Farm or something like that, Halligan's Farm or something like that, of how it formed, and then also the Halflings joining the League, and how their side of the Broken Alliance story of that corruption that came into their government by Lord Draveld and caused this huge racial rift between Halflings and humans. I think there will be some really cool stories, and also what happened after the war as well, because it did note that some of the other nations that had fallen to these mercenaries were taken under the leadership of the League of Roidina. What happened there, and the fact that they don't have that access to the Shire's goods, which is a lot of the farming anymore, so they kind of had to. It kind of fits to what kind of America's going forward with the tariffs of being a little bit all these trading partners being shut off, and then how do you kind of survive once you have all these your major trading partners shut off, and trying to kind of adapt to be sufficient on yourself. I think there's a really cool story there. So I would kind of look into what has already been established and start to flesh out all those events. I think a big one that Mark Z, who do the co-host for the Pannithor, we call it Pannithor, our podcast about the lore. What we're talking about is the Winter's War as well. I think that's a really cool story to tell, because there is a Shining One that dies at the end of that story, and it plays such a huge part in the foundation of what we know as the Infancy. The Infancy didn't exist until that, when Winter, one of the Wicked Ones, was able to freeze over basically the entire upper half of the world. Because keep in mind, the known world that we have is only the northern hemisphere, so we don't even know what's down south. But ultimately, they froze over that world, and when it melted, we got the Infancy. So there's so many awesome stories that have already taken place, or could be told that had already taken place. That would be one half of what I would kind of be directing, and try and fill in a lot of those blanks and make sure I have established timeline. Going forward, it all would depend on what Mantic wanted to do, because you want it to tie into what the franchise, or the direction the franchise is going, and you want it to make sense. And you see that in a good example, a recent example anyway, is the MCU. And a lot of people criticize the MCU of how its current status is, but I'm not talking about the current status. I mean how it started. They had a really clear plan of how they wanted everything to interconnect and move. And a lot of the time they were filming those movies as they were releasing them and also planning them. So somehow it all worked. So if you look at the phase one of even, I would say the whole Thanos phase 1, 2, and 3, it syncs up really well because you had someone at the top making sure the threads all worked. And that would be what I would want to do, is make the threads work. I wouldn't want to plan the novels. I'll be like, all right, Mantic, what do you guys want to do? All right, let's sit down and let's work out a whole bunch of pitches, or at least have the door open a whole bunch of pitches and see how we can all make this interconnect and work, and make sure we all have a clear understanding that we want to follow the same road. That we don't want to go, all right, we're not going to share information because we don't want to give anything away. It's like, no, we have to all be on the same team here. We want a line in a novel to make complete sense with what you're working with. So if I had directive control, it would be all about just making sure that the threads all work, but never pitch anything, and just try and make all the pitches work together, if that makes sense. I would want to be a Kevin Feige rather than someone that actually directed it like a Jon Favreau.
Fantastic answer.
Does that all make sense? I don't know.
Does.
I just ripped it off. So.
I mean, imagine being the guy who works at Winged Hussar who had to make all of that come together. I'd hate that job. I would hate that job. Brandon, any thoughts? I think he's
hypothetically.
Oh, the conversations we could have. It's a journey. I've mentioned before. It's an interesting process working with both Mantic and Corvus Belli, and in the past Warlord and etc. other companies about trying to make it all gel. I mean, you can even see it in the pub schedule. The pub schedule and the books that we've done in the past. I mean, Dave, you were on me for a while about when's the next book coming out? I'm like, well, this was supposed to come out, but now this is coming out first, and now this is getting moved around because when you first the biggest obstacle that you have to try to clear when you're a third party working with another company is, what are the visions that you both see? And then when you're starting and there's nothing baseline to really work with, you both are kind of like, well, we'll see where this goes. You kind of just go with a vision. And sometimes that vision is the right path. Sometimes the vision gets changed. Sometimes you're on the right path, but you need to change. So, what we did with Steps to Deliverance and Drowned Secrets and Nature's Night, they were great novels, but it wasn't necessarily the way forward. Steps to Deliverance absolutely has become the way forward because we said this is our, we've always been very clear about, Orion is kind of the Captain America in our roster of Pannithor heroes. He's kind of who we see as our poster child of the novels. But as we've moved on, we have to now look and say, okay, what are the novels we need to use? I mean, even in the very beginning, Ronnie had said he wants the novels to drive the game forward. And what we had envisioned and what they had envisioned were two different things. Well, we were just trying to tell stories that would help, what we thought were the stories pushing the narrative forward of those factions. Now we're getting led the threads of, okay, this is what we want that will coincide with campaigns moving forward. This is what we want to base the bare bones pitch of how we want the factions to move forward. And then the authors have had more control to say, okay, so this is where you want to go. This is how I'm going to build up those factions to get to that point. And this is how I'm going to flesh out the backstory. So you've seen it in, the biggest one you've seen it in is, Pride of a King, because that was the first novel, and Broken Alliance too. Those were the first two novels where Mantic said, here are the factions, this is where we want them to go. Authors go and, build them as you want to. And you'll be seeing that a lot more with the novels moving forward. We've kind of taken a step back from standalone pitches, and, I as much as I would like to accept new pitches, we're not going to be accepting outside author pitches for a while because we're just going to concentrate on the authors that we have and in the direction that Mantic wants to move. They're giving us the threads, we're moving forward in that direction. And, with the lore committee and all that, we have pretty much somebody representing almost every faction. And so those are going to be the authors to write about those factions moving forward. So it is a give and take. It is a little bit of experimental. And we've kind of now finally hit the stride of where we want to go. But as I've said on other podcasts, you're now starting to see the people who are like, I've heard so much about these novels. Where do I get invested? How do I begin? Where do I start? And more every year, I'm seeing more and more turnaround. This past Adepticon, we've sold the most Tales of Pannithor novels we've ever sold in one show because people were just so invested. And, they went to the Mantic booth. And, shout out to Rick at Mantic. He really helped us out and made sure we had proper signage there to make sure people knew if they were going to the Mantic booth, to come to us to get the novels. There's a shout out to, the web team over at Mantic. They've been able to put the novels, shout them out in the newsletters and everything. So, it's finally people are starting to fully understand that the novels are a thing and they do expand the world.
And Mantic's noticing as well because, that they put it in the new Champions rulebook as well at the end. There's a bit of an advertisement for the Winged Hussar books. And to be honest, the way I see it is the Winged Hussar books and Mantic are one of the same in terms of its continuity. The best example of how it can work really, really well, and when it does work really well, is the Clash of Kings 2022 and Broken Alliance. Because it's written by the same person. I think, from my understanding, it's written by the same person by Scott Washburn.
Scott Washburn.
Yeah, he wrote both of them, and so if you read Broken Alliance, it works smoothly into Clash of Kings 2022, and vice versa. And I think that's why it kind of hit home for me so well, because I read that. And then I read the PDF, the free PDF, which has all that halfling stuff in there, and it felt in sync. And I think that's what grabbed me as well, the fact that was in sync. And then, not everything, it turns out, was as in sync as those two, but that is a good example of how it can work really well. And yeah, there is a lot of continuity errors because I'm a big old nerd and I poke holes in everything. But ultimately, it worked really well, and that's what I hope for. You can have this cinematic world. People say cinematic world, I think movies and TV, but I don't know how you can say it. And this interconnected, weaving verse between the table, what's on the table, and what's in the books, and anything else really well, as long as there's a really solid communication and also commitment as well. So with novels taking so long to actually produce, it's the same way of a movie, is that once you commit to something, you kind of want to stick to the plan. Otherwise, by the time the movie comes out or the book comes out, it's not going to make any sense. So there is a bit of a commitment leap that you need to take as well. And people love universes that connect with each other. I think, just to go back to the Halo one, when Halo first came out in 2021, if memory serves me right, and the Fall of Reach came out, Fall of Reach was only expected to be just a simple throwaway novel that ties into a launch game for an Xbox. But a lot of the lore that has been established in that book is now concrete lore that has been seen in the games. And big one is the Spartan Twos, is that it elaborated on who John, Master Chief, grew up with. Like, you had Fred, you had Linda, you had Kelly, that was first mentioned in that book. And they were characters that you could play in Halo 5. So what they established in the books tied over, and you've got this big, good, interconnected world. Now, all the books don't really make a lot of sense. This is a bit of a spoiler, but Guilty Spark doesn't die. When in Halo 3, he actually comes back to life and he's still alive in the novels, and there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really make sense. But ultimately, that's a good, but really that example of that tie-in novel being such a big part of now the canon of Halo just shows you the power. If you actually, if you write down the plan right, it can work out really well. Or sometimes you could fall into it like that. The Halo one was probably something that just fell in their lap and they made it work, but you just had to commit to it. And I think that's the biggest thing about that universe. The reason why that universe has gone so well, the Halo universe, is because they've committed to some of that lore that was established in the novels.
Well, to go back to one of your earlier points about the creative direction. So we talk a lot about the world building there and how you'd align it going forwards. But you mentioned timelines, and why wouldn't you do a timeline? So I'm going to throw in a very unpopular opinion. The Beatles, not the greatest band in the world. Second unpopular opinion.
Really, Matt? Look, this is your guys' podcast. You have to deal with the consequences, not me. So,
so timelines. Why wouldn't you do it? Now, if you're in a fantasy world and you've got dwarves, elves, and stuff who may live to 1,000 years, hundreds of years, you've got a lot of time to play with if you're advancing the timeline forward. If you jump to some other real successful franchises and IPs, James Bond is always in his early 40s. No matter how many years go by, he's always that age. Lara Croft is always in her late 20s, with the exception of some flashbacks and prequels. All of the original games, she's in her late 20s. Because people don't want to watch their heroes grow old. They don't want to see what happened to Indiana Jones recently, which was one of the biggest commercial flops in cinematic history. So if you then take human characters with a human lifespan and you're advancing that timeline 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to keep moving that world development and forwards, if you're a character-based author, you got problems. You got real problems. So just throwing that out as that is another way of looking at it. That's why sometimes it can be more difficult if you. That's why some of these franchises I've just mentioned don't have a timeline for that purpose. If you get heavily hit character-based.
But you mentioned the franchise that you mentioned had one very common thing involved there. So it all comes down to what you're actually talking about here. So if you're talking about individuals, exactly, like James Bond, like Indiana Jones, that's a little bit different. Yeah, but the main character, the character of Kings of War isn't the characters that the novels are about. The character is Pannithor. That's the character. And that character, one of its defining traits is things happen on it and things move along and the timeline moves forward. That's the defining trait of the Kings of War universe. So the defining trait of Tomb Raider is Lara Croft. That is and the same with James Bond is James Bond. But with Kings of War, it isn't individual characters. It's all these factions warring with each other, and how the story kind of goes along and takes place. So I would say it all comes down to what you're actually talking about. But I mean, you can try doing Star Trek without doing any timelines. You wouldn't be able to, because that's not Star Trek is all about moving forward and exploring and discovery. And you know, if things were all taking place the exact same year, the story of Star Trek wouldn't make any sense.
But
so it comes down to what you're talking about.
With Star Trek, you're pushing out 20-hour-long episodes in a season, so you're getting a lot of story out quite quickly. So yeah,
I don't know. You probably could get the same out of a novel. You could probably do a season or a novel, right?
I don't think so. No, I don't think you could get as much out. You're looking at something more movie length, I think. But I guess it depends on how you do these things, right? It's
yeah.
But I do. I totally agree with what you're saying about ultimately what's the objective. But in terms of the main character in the novels being the world, a wise man on a podcast once told me that there was one author who had done 46% of the novels for this franchise, and that guy has never written any world building or done a single plot. So I don't know. He's
yeah, that guy's kind of an idiot.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to the next question.
It was me, by the way. Just so anyone out there is worried, it was me. It was me that said that. But I mean, yeah,
I was the idiot author.
My perception.
Yeah. No, that's all right.
I wouldn't say idiot author. But yeah, that's just my perception on it. But I mean, I think it all comes down to what you're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about a character, then yeah, that that's the main thing. But if you're talking about something like, this what we're talking about here, Kings of War, I think it's quite hard to not put a timeline in it, because you would just be lost of where you're at with it.
Yeah, that's a good shout. That's a good shout, dude.
Today's episode is sponsored by On Military Matters, your source for new, used, and out-of-print books on military history, wargaming, and modeling. Check them out at onmilitarymatters.com and make sure to sign up for the weekly e-flyer. That's onmilitarymatters, all one word, .com.
Okay, well, you mentioned characters, so here's a character-based question for you. If the Winged Hussar team decided to commit creative suicide and drive ahead with a forced-together team of characters in the style of the Avengers, from the novels, who would you crowbar together into a team and why?
So I can't use in the Dungeon Saga characters, right?
Ooh, it's got to be,
because
There are a
technically
few.
they work pretty well as teams.
yeah. I guess if they've already, let's put some brackets on it that must appear in a already published novel.
Okay, Aaron Cadwater, because is it Carl Water? I don't know how to say his last name. Carl Waldo.
Yes.
Aaron. Yeah.
Aaron.
Cool. So Aaron.
Aaron Basilea.
Yeah. Aaron Basilea. So Aaron Carl Water, whatever. So he's the head honcho of Broken Alliance. He's technically the Muster Master by 2068. So when the Shards get invaded by the Reforged Orcs, I would have him, and he would be a senior guy. So I mean, he's only like 21 in Broken Alliance. So he would be like 10 years later, would be like 30. So he would be prime age to be part of the squad. I have to do Orion, but I would like an elderly Orion. I think that would work. Just because you see him as a young boy, you could say, in Steps of Deliverance, and I kind of would like to see what an elderly version of Orion would be like. Who else? I want to get someone from Pride of the King in there. I think her name's Jordana. What was it?
Jorna.
Yorna, that's it. She's a junior warsmith in Pride of the King. I would like that, and one of the Demuse brothers from Honor's Price, probably the one that slept with the captain, Captain Saj. Terrible name. Names.
Dayrun, I think.
Yeah, Dayrun. I think Dayrun makes sense. Yeah, Dayrun. So yeah, those are the four that I would put together. Would be a fun adventure, and I'll pick the adventure that they do. I would get them to assassinate Lord Draveld.
Interesting.
That's their job. Yeah, because he is kind of painted as a dictator. He apparently was he was supposed to be a parody of Trump, but I think they're two different things now. But ultimately, it would be interesting to end Lord Draveld's storyline with an assassination because of all the corruption he's done, and especially it would give motivation to Aaron because the reason why Broken Alliance happened was because of Lord Draveld, and it'll be cool for him to go like, all right, I've retired as Muster Master now. What's my next journey I'm going to be on? And he's kind of achieved everything he needs to achieve, but this one thing's hanging over him. The reason his origin story roots back to the Broken Alliance, and he's like, all right, we need to finish this job. This corrupt man has caused this. He's got too powerful. He is causing all this tension around the region. I'm going to do something that I haven't done before and assassinate this lord. There you go. And
Nice.
that's got nothing to do with modern politics, by the way. This is just me just riffing off a bit.
Yes. That's a good team. I like it. As being the editor and having seen all their stories, I can see how they all come together. I like that. Dave, we actually got a listener question for the first time, which is hooray for us, by user Big Guns. And I said I was gonna talk about.
Is this just you? Is this just you doing like a fake account and
Yes.
just wanting to use that name?
Well, we are the only two
1,000%,
listeners,
no.
so yeah, it's us.
So I said I was going to talk about it in this episode because it is a very lore question. I figured I'll let you answer this one to however you want to answer it. So Big Gun says, Love the lore episodes. Since you were asking for suggestions, you started adding timelines to your books. Love it. Could you perhaps go into some details on the storyline for the world in general? For example, what is happening in the world as Broken Alliance is happening? I don't think your team is responsible for the entire lore, like the portions written in the rulebooks, but some further background in the world would be wonderful. So maybe, I think the best way to answer this, and you tell me what you think, Dave, can you give a 5-minute, I think that should be long enough, quick overview of the world of Pannithor and the events? How's that sound? Do you think that answers the question, or do you want to answer in a different way? You're a guest. You pick the answer.
All right, this is what we'll bridge this really quickly because there's a lot. We're talking about a world that's been around for 15 years. There's a lot of stuff to cover, so we're going to try and do this as digestible as possible. Now,
and this is the last question, so keep that in mind.
Okay, it's the last question. All right,
sort of. There's something.
Yeah, we've got our but this is the last big question.
All right, I'm going to speed run it, but just to pretext this, there is a page on the wiki called Major Events. So if you go to the wiki, one of the drop-down menus that's resources. If you got a complete timeline, I've actually done a complete timeline by the year. But if you click Major Events, this will have a breakdown of all the major events in the current timeline. So, all right, I'm going to try my best. This is the first time I've done it this way. So the first off, we start with the creation of Pannithor, and the primogenitors actually are the gods that created the universe, like the god of air, god of land, and all that, or god of death and all that fun stuff. And then the Celestians arrive, and they see the ways of the old gods, and it's very kind of primal, and they're like sacrificing babies and stuff. And the Celestians are like, no, you know what? That way is dumb. Let's get rid of the old gods' ways, and they go around starting to influence the world after they arrive. And then a few batches of Celestians come. There's the 3 batches of Celestians. You've got the first one, the second wave, and third wave. Eventually, they kick away all the old gods' way of thinking, and then Celestians are now seen as the gods of the universe. And then eventually a mirror gets snatched. So Oscan, one of the Celestians, he wants to kind of earn favor back in because he had a bit of a falling out with one of the leader of the Celestians, Mythicot something, whatever. The leader of the Celestians, he had a falling out with him, so he tricked this elf into... That's it, Mescator. He tricked this elf into building a mirror. The mirror ends up smashing, and then all the Celestians get split in half into the Wicked Ones and to the Shining Ones. And then eventually they have a big war over things. So the Wicked Ones are obviously the bad guys, and they kind of want wicked things to happen, and they create the at that time during the God War, they create the Orcs, Goblins, they create the Herd races, they create the Trident Realm races. They basically have a big conflict and fight each other. And eventually they end the God War by... what's his name again? I can't say his name.
Mescator. Yeah,
he has a son with a human, so a demigod called Domavada, and he has a duking out with Oscan's wicked half, and eventually steal his axe, smash on the ground, open up the abyss, and then chuck all the Wicked Ones into the abyss, and they hide down there. Apart from Winter, who ends up actually not being part of the God War, she kind of runs away, and that's important for later. A few years later, that's about 2,000 years later, the Winter finally acts her kind of revenge, her way of dominating everything, and freezes over the entire land. Now, at first everyone thinks, it's just an extended winter, like winter is coming kind of deal, but then the owls work out, it's actually the Wicked One being a bit of a dick here. So basically all the noble races get together and they start fighting. However, the Shining Ones are still kind of butthurt over the God War, so they don't really pay any attention to this, and they kind of hide away, apart from one, which is Valador, who eventually dies at the end of that war. And then after the war ends and Winter mysteriously kind of vanishes in a way, she gets defeated, killed, I don't know, it's kind of vague what actually happens to her, but eventually she's defeated, and then all the ice melts, and that's how we get the big infancy in the middle of the map. That's how that actually is generated, all the ice melting. And essentially Valador dies as well. Apparently dies. I don't really know. Really, it's vague. Again, it's a lot of vagueness that's happened in the story, so just, it's vague. Anyway, after that, a few years later, we have what we call the Reckoning, and that's when the Vargard actually attacks the Abyss. Not really much of a story there. It's just that they are trying, the guys that still honor the old gods that the Celestians kicked out, they get together, they try and invade the Abyss. It doesn't work, and then they lose and get their ass kicked. A few years later, the Free Dwarfs So the group of dwarfs kind of separate from the dwarfs. This is in the year 3001, and that's how the free dwarfs are actually founded. So you got the free dwarfs now, and then you got the dwarfs. And then there's a great civil war in the dwarven society, and that's how Golok comes to power. So there's a big, civil war. They fight each other. End up Golok wins, and that's the end of the dwarven civil war. A few years later, and now I'm saying a few years later because it's never established when exactly this happens. These order events I just know happen in this order. A few years later, we have the Great Revolt, which is when the Ratkin actually rebel against the Abyssal Dwarfs, and the Ratkin essentially able to separate and become their own kind of thing. And they start spreading throughout the world, and some factions actually think Ratkin are a bit of a myth, as we see in Ascent of the Goblin King. But ultimately, they start spreading throughout the world, and Ratkin are kind of unleashed upon it. So you've got the Ratkin that are slaves to the Abyssal Dwarfs, and now you've got the free Ratkin that are scurrying around the Earth, Pannithor. After that, that's when Dungeon Saga Origins starts. So Dungeon Saga Origins is the Fab Four, so that's Denethor, Royden, Margarel, and Olaf. I can't pronounce those names very well, but, that's the way it is. They get together. Basilean, yes. Yeah. They get together, and then their first mission, which is in Dungeon Saga Origins, is to find a map so they can get into Dolgarth and actually stop. Oh, I can't remember his name. This is hard to do off the dome. I'm gonna have to quickly. What's his name? Morbius. Morbius. Mortibris.
Yeah, I think Mark had it right.
Morbius. Yeah. Anyway, to stop him from essentially getting a book of Veldor. And anyway, they beat him, able to defeat him, but he ends up taking taking pages of the book, and then Morbius we'll say Morbius because it sounds funnier. Morbius runs off and goes to the ruins. Yeah, it was from the Matrix. It's Morbid time. He goes to the ruins of Duvar, and he's able to free Bel, B-A-E-L, Bel. Pronounce his name.
It's good. It's good. It's your quick and dirty. People can look on the wiki if they want to know the names.
Exactly. He unleashes Belial, who was in prison there years ago by Veldor, and they end up escaping from that. And this is the Return of Veldor Dungeon Saga thing. Those two manage to escape, and then they end up doing Destiny of Kings supplement, which they call the Abyssal Crusade, and they go around and they open portals, or it sounds like they open portals, but ways for people from the Abyss to escape, which leads into the Edge of the Abyss. So this is in the year 3850, and Edge of the Abyss lasts for 4 years, and then after that, about 11 years later, in 3865, you got Harpy's Rift, which is basically an abyssal dwarf finding a big pocket of energy, ancient energy, unleashing it on the world. There was a big ray of light that burst into the world that everyone could see, and ultimately everyone kind of congregated on this energy to try and stop that energy from being unleashed and using against the realm of good, basically. So the Harpies of Rift eventually was sealed again, but it caused a whole bunch of stuff. That's how Riftforged Orcs were created, and a whole bunch of other stuff that should lead into the storyline in the future. After Harpy's Rift was sealed, we had then the Broken Alliance of the League of Roydana. So that's the Broken Alliance book of the Shires and the League of Roydana kind of splitting off. And then you had the Invasion of Roydana in 3868. That was 2 years later. Then you had Shadow Horizons, which don't really ask me what happened there, but either way, it's the Twilight Kin kind of got a little bit frisky and just tried to open up more portals to the void. And then you had the Deepwater Crusade, which is what happens underwater, and essentially the rift that happened in Harpy's Rift that opened up also allowed the Abyss to escape through more different vents throughout the world, because that energy that was released by Harpy's Rift also opened ways for people to escape the abyss, and that's how the Deepwater Crusade occurred. And that's about it. And I know that was very disjointed, but hopefully it made sense to somebody.
Hey,
Well,
it was closer to 10, but you still did a fantastic job. Big guns, I hope that answers your question. If you have any more, if anybody has any more, please feel free to leave comments. I'm looking at them at least, and I'll make sure one of us answer them. Or we'll get an expert on, like Dave, to answer them.
I need a breath off of that. Give me a sec.
I didn't know any of that. Did you know any of that, Brandon? Never heard of any of that.
There was something about Basileans, and I know I've heard of them. The rest of it was a little bit of gobbledygook, but
Yeah,
I mean, it may
I don't
not
think
make
we
sense,
need to
but,
know it. I don't think you and I need to know that, Brandon. We should be all right.
yeah, we're good. The world exists. We write in it. People exist. There's stuff and things. We're good.
Yeah, but either way, if you want to look it up yourself, just look up major events on the kingsofwarwiki.com, and that will have a breakdown of all those events. And I've tried to put them in the right timeline and with the years associated with them, but I mean, I don't even know when Dungeon Saga Origins and Dungeon Saga even takes place. There's never established what exact year that takes place. All I know is that it's before the year 3849. And after the Great Dwarven Civil War, which is 3,558.
We are drawing towards the end of our time, so we have for you, Dave. Now, you've heard an episode or two before. We sometimes do this rather ludicrous, tongue-in-cheek, not particularly serious quick-fire questions. I've got two rounds of quick-fire questions for you with a different theme, and they're obviously Pannithor kind of based, the novels in particular. So here's your first set of 10 questions. So how this
Remember the quick fire.
Be careful with be
whatever.
careful with me. There's a lot of novels, all right.
Yeah.
Quick fire. So that means just answer the first thing that comes to your head. No justifying these ones. These are just straight answers.
Yeah. The justification comes to the next one. A little bit. So here's what's happened is, right,
I'll shut down my ADHD for this, all right?
You've just been recruited by Winged Hussar to work with Marketing Malcolm, their latest addition to the team, right? You've got 10 friends with very different interests, and these are your 10 questions. So what I want you to do is I'm going to tell you, in order, your 10 friends, what their favourite movie genre is. And you just need to shout out, if that's your favourite movie genre, this is the Winged Hussar Kings of War novel you should read. Okay? Easy enough?
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to overthink this, but I'll try not to.
Here we go with, friend number 1. Horror.
Horror? Oh, God. I'm going to have to get all the books up.
Yeah, I probably should have said that to start with.
Yeah, I think there's not really a horror.
There will be.
It gets worse. If you think, it won't match directly, wait till you hear question 10. You just got to do the best you can with what you got.
Yeah, I'd say horror would be one of the short stories in Edge of the Abyss. I would say Eyes Unblinking.
Okay.
Oh,
I did not see that coming.
Yeah. Wait, okay. Eyes Unblinking or is that the elf one? Eyes Unblinking is the elf one. Oh,
no. Eyes Unblinking, I think that's the prequel to Nature's Night.
Oh, not Eyes Unblinking then. It's the elf one where the Night Stalkers attack. Which one? Oh God, I can't remember. I think maybe it's not Kingship in the Straits of Madness. Oh, Straits of Madness would work. In Straits of Madness.
Okay.
Or Last Stand. It's Last Stand. I would say The Last Stand.
All right, that's good. Friend number 2, action. That's the genre.
Action. That's the genre. Okay. I would say Ascent of the Goblin King.
Okay. Friend number 3, family-friendly adventure.
Family-friendly adventure in a Kings of War novel. Maybe Drowned Secrets, but that's pretty dark. It gets pretty dark at times.
I was going to say the whole baby sacrificing thing.
There's not really a family-friendly one.
It's going to get worse than this. A lot worse.
The Beast. Let's go the short story again. A Beast Within.
Okay. Friend number 4, comedy.
Comedy. I don't. Weirdly, I would say Pious, maybe?
Yes,
that's a good one. I could see that.
Yeah,
I got in there.
Yeah, I'd say Pious.
That's
of course
good.
you got in there. You wrote like 43% of them.
Yeah. Okay, friend number 5, romance.
Romance.
Ooh, I've got an answer for this one.
Can you take this one? Do I get a gimme? Like, do I phone a friend? Can I phone a friend in this?
This is a phone a friend
okay.
answer.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Through Thick and Thin on that one.
Through Thick and... I can see that. That's probably the best one, I would say, now that I'm thinking about it.
I'm welling up here. Okay, so they were the easy starters. Friend number 6, neo-noir dystopian thriller.
Neo-noir dystopian thriller. Okay. Go Drown Secrets.
Okay. Number 7.
Doesn't really fit, but nothing fits for that
Is
one.
this going to get worse? Number 7, Grindhouse.
Okay, this is going to be... I don't know what Grindhouse is.
Basically, how do you describe it? Really low-budget B movies.
Very low-budget B movie.
Normally quite brutal and violent.
I want to say Hero Falling.
Yeah. I'd love to see that done in
not
Grindhouse.
not the low budget. More of a kind of like, if I don't know, that's the closest thing that I can put towards it.
Hasn't got many. It's got a low cast. So, low number of cast numbers. Number 8, Japanese RPG / anime.
Honest Price.
Number 9, pretentious French art house coming of age drama.
Okay, I have to pick a Mark one on this one. It will have to be Faith Aligned or Steps of Deliverance.
Steps of Deliverance is a coming of age drama, to be fair. Okay, and your final friend.
Yeah.
Final friend. Satirical claymation teen drama with subtle undertones of an anthropological surrealism theme.
God, how drunk were you when you wrote these, mate? Say that again.
That's all right. We can do a pass on that one. We can do a pass. You've done well.
No.
You've done very well.
No. We're going to answer this.
You want to follow it through to the end. That's fine. A satirical claymation teen drama with subtle undertones of anthropological surrealism.
Pride of the King.
Okay. I think Ben
mainly
will be
because
really
the teen drama thing. It's got a lot of drama in Pride of the King.
You're going to be delighted to know that in round B, there's only 5 questions, but I want 3 things from each of you on this. So here's what's going to happen. This is Pannithorios, which is Pannithor scenarios, where I'm going to present Wiki Dave with a series of believable real-life situations. Each problem scenario I read out to you is going to require a character from the novels to be selected as your solution. So on each of these 5 ones, I'm going to read them out to you, and you've got to provide us with A, just name the character to solve your problem. B, for the benefit of the listeners, name the novel they feature in. And C, in one single brief sentence, justify your choice. All clear enough?
Yeah, I just want to state for the listener, it is 7 a.m. for me. But this is a lot, all right? So on a Sunday. So let's see how this is going to go.
Yeah, this is where we're putting you. And the thing is, because no one else knows this stuff as much as you do, no one else is going to get put through this. It's literally you're the only guy in the world who has to suffer this. Okay.
Don't you think I've suffered enough in my life?
Think of his heart, man. Think of his heart.
Yeah.
I know. This could be it for me.
I'm committed to this now. Okay, we're nearly there. We're nearly there.
All right.
Okay, question number 1. Scenario 1. You're an important man, and you are required to leave the country on business for several days. Just before leaving,
All right.
the national news declares that there is a possibility of an outbreak of mutant kiwis wreaking havoc in your area of the country. Who do you go
Fruit
to?
or the bird?
The bird. Who do you go to guard your house and guarantee the safety of your pet hamster whilst you are out of the country?
Okay. It would have to be Aaron Corewater, because if he was in Broken Alliance, and if you notice, there is a period in Broken Alliance where he protects his family home, but makes a bit of a fortification, and he does such a great job that he gets noticed by the Muster Master.
That's a good answer. There you go.
Yes,
One
it
down,
was.
4 to go. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Believable.
I thought
realistic-
Brandon would have to do it too.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah. No, he didn't, but he does now. Yeah, Brandon, go for it.
All right.
What? You want me? What am I doing now?
Yeah,
I can't be the only one having to suffer through
Yeah,
this.
you've got to answer these as well.
I'm trying not to contaminate the audio with me dying laughing over here. But hold on a minute.
All right. We'll give him a grace.
hold on.
We'll give him a grace.
I can answer because I actually have the benefit of having the questions in front of me. So haha. But
Damn it.
I'm gonna have Aaron. If I was gonna be cheap, I'd say yes. That's a good answer. I'm gonna go with Aaron as well. I am going to change, and I will say Orion, because he will guard the house and he will make damn sure that no harm befalls that hamster. Shall he take breath? So he is going to defend that home like nobody's business.
Okay.
And he's got a soft side, so you bet that he's going to treat that hamster like it's the most sacred thing.
I don't know. He did treat his uncle very well, and his uncle died. So
Yeah, but his uncle's
yeah.
old. I mean, hamsters.
he's not very good. He's not very good at protecting people. I'm just saying.
Question two. Sorry, it's not question. It's realistic, believable scenario number 2. You're 25 years old. Life has not gone the way you'd hoped. You don't have a steady job. You don't have a driver's license, and you're currently single. You are invited to a high school reunion. Who do you bring with you to pretend to be the love of your life, to lie to your school friends and pretend life went better than it actually did?
Okay. First of all, having a high school reunion after 7 years doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it's kind of a dick move. But ultimately, probably Estelle, because I mean, she would be perfect for it because she's gorgeous, and also the fact that she's a badass as well, so she wouldn't put up with anyone hitting on her. And she's in Heroes Falling and Steps of Deliverance.
It's a good answer.
All right,
I'd go as far as say the correct answer. Yeah, Brandon, go for it.
I was gonna say I originally said I wasn't gonna give the same answer as a cop out, but I will say Estelle, and I will say that I will ply her with my rich uncle's vineyard and say she may have whatever pick of the vineyard that she wishes if she was to put up with this facade for an evening.
It's like
See, the thing is, you wouldn't need to pay her. Yeah, well, I don't think you'd need to pay her. She would just do the honourable thing. And, like, if you're that desperate... And, again, Mark, I don't know why you just took, like, a Photoshop of my life at 25, but thanks for doing that. But, I mean, ultimately, I think she would just do it for free, because she should just... She would complain about it, but I think ultimately she would do it as the right thing to do.
I don't know. Steve Hildrew says she's the most
Mark,
horrible character. I don't know. Steve Hildrew says she's a horrible character. So, I don't know. If Steve's right, I don't know. What do I know?
I don't think she's horrible, but I think she is I think she's a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she's a little bit, not self-indulged, but she would kind of, I think almost, would she make the moment about herself?
Yes.
If she was getting all the attention?
She would have fun with it.
But she might say, get a load of this guy over here that I'm with. I'll tell you what's really going on. So that's why I'm like, I will ply you with
I don't think
wine.
she would betray you, though. I don't think she would betray. If she has agreed to it, I don't think she would do that.
Mark?
Yeah, Mark, you wrote the character.
Yeah, I kind of did. Last Light coming out. We hope quarter 4 this year. You'll get the answer.
We have the answer about this hypothetical going to the high school reunion. How should you react?
Wait, hold on.
Actually, just about that.
Yeah, this.
Hold on a minute. You cannot pull the Brandon Rossbaum answer. You need to answer that as the author.
Now you know how we feel, Brandon.
There you go.
How Wiki Dave feels every time he asks you a question. You're like, maybe.
Yes, but see, I'm the editor, so I'm entitled to pull the puppet strings around and say, "Wah, you don't know the answers."
Yeah, here we are.
Here we are. Duke that out.
Exactly. Here we are, moving on to realistic, believable scenario number 3. If you're both ready. Okay.
All right.
Yes.
You're the CEO of a huge multinational entertainment company worth billions. Your company has made a live-action movie about an old European folklore story concerning a princess and a specified number of dwarves in a forest. Peter Dinklage states his disapproval, and one of your subordinates overreacts and produces the movie with CGI dwarves. Test screening is such a disaster that you elect to carry out expensive reshoots with real dwarves. Which Pannithor dwarf do you cast as your lead dwarf?
Oh, okay.
And if that isn't a scenario that happens to most of us at some point, we've all been there.
I'm gonna go with Bannock because he's already seeing visions of other people. He'll be perfect for an actor to put himself in the right role. He's already seeing make-believe dwarfs in his visions, and I would say he's disconnected from reality enough to be an actor. Because you have to be a little bit crazy to be an actor.
That's a good answer, Brandon.
I am going to go with Dinadek Damuz from Honor's Price, because I will say to him, now, listen, Din, you're on this quest to reclaim your homeland. You know what'll really help sell that? You appear as the lead character in this movie that I'm producing. Everybody will know the Damuz family's plight after we're done with you. You're going to be a star.
I don't know what accent that was, but I liked it.
Basically, we put dwarves with mental illness.
It's
with
a Hollywood
ego
accent.
and mental illness.
Yeah, there's a theme. There's a theme. That's good. Okay, only 2 more to go. Only 2 more to go. Okay, here's another scenario. You've probably already found yourself in this exact scenario. So let's go for it. You're a billionaire entrepreneur with a trailblazing space program. You send a rocket into space with celebrity passengers. One of the passengers, upon returning to Earth, pursues an ill-advised media engagement campaign claiming to be a real astronaut. As a damage limitation exercise, you decide to send a second rocket into space with a more media-savvy group of passengers. Who do you elect to be your spaceship passenger spokesperson?
Okay. I
got a great
This is a hard one. All right, you go first, Brandon, and I'll think of one.
I am going to send Dylan Genimer from Nature's Night because he's already... spoilers. He's already pulled off one of the greatest stories and had all these people believe it's true. I'm going to have him be the one to lay the cover story.
That's good. Wiki Dave, do you need more time?
I'm going to send one, and I don't know if this is allowed. I would send the Green Lady because she would bring credibility when she came back down. No one will take her taking the piss or trying to get a leg up because she often doesn't. She doesn't vocalize how great she is all the time. So basically, whatever she says when she returns, people would take very, very seriously. But I don't know if that's allowed because technically she's a romantic kind of character, but she's in the novels. So.
No, we can do that. I think we can do that.
Karina. Well, Karina then. How about just Karina, not the Green Lady?
Okay, yeah. I think that's fair. And that's from Rise of Celestians.
The Rise of Celestians, yeah. And Fall of Celestians. And
yes.
Basically everything until she merges with light and dark. Lillian? Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You survived this far, guys. Only one last one to go. Here's your last one. Another realistic scenario. This has happened to me relatively recently. Okay, you're a prominent and well-respected official within an intergalactic peacekeeping force. Whilst temporarily stranded on a desert planet, which seems to reoccur a worrying number of times within the IP you feature in, you discover a young boy who you believe to be the Chosen One. Whilst bravely fighting against a criminally underrated antagonist, you are mortally wounded. Who do you demand takes custodianship over the Chosen One to be responsible for his training and upbringing?
Grogger. Because I think that would be hilarious. Can you imagine Grogger Splittooth, who's now, well, it sounds like he's the king of Glimmer, taking ownership of this, I'm guessing a human child, and breeding the human child as a goblin?
That is actually really funny.
That would be hilarious, and just see what happens. Whether he becomes like this insane, powerful character, or is basically as bumbling as a normal goblin. I think that would be hilarious, because he will be a human talking like a goblin.
That's a good answer, Brandon. Can you do better?
I think the real only justifiable answer is we give the child to Ambira.
Another paragon of virtue?
No. I changed my... That was a joke answer. I'm going to go with the only true... I'm going to call him the true good, hey, I'm just a normal guy trying to live a life here. Hero we have in the novels is I'm going to give it to James Elias. Of Pious and Through Thick and Thin.
I think he's had too much. He's gone through enough. He doesn't need to raise a kid as well.
No, he's going to. Damn it, he's going to.
I wouldn't trust that guy with an inflatable Lilo, let alone a child, but okay. That's it. That's all I got. That is the end of my ludicrous questions. So...
God, I can't believe I made it through that. That was a bit of a gauntlet.
Dave, thank you for joining us. I know it is way too early in the morning for you, and it is completely opposite. We're in the triangle of really weird time zones between the three of us, but I appreciate you joining us here. It was a pleasure speaking with you. If you guys enjoyed Wiki Dave, please make sure to leave a comment and let us know if you want him back on for another episode. I'm sure we're going to get you on at some point or another, if you're willing to come back.
Oh, yeah, of course. And definitely. And if anyone wants to, I talk about the lore with Mark Zazinski for Magic Universe Podcast. We have a lore podcast, and we've got something cooking of perhaps having the lore masters themselves, Matt and Ronnie, to actually come on and talk about how the lore has actually come about. Now, whether that's actually going to happen or not, we'll find out. We're in talks at the moment. But it's really a bit of a history lesson of how the Pannithor kind of originated, how it's evolved, and talk about, what things they tried and so forth. So I'm really hoping that happens. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, and last one from me is just after all of my hilarity. I found it funny, no one else did, and I get that. But being deadly serious, support Dave on the wiki. We're churning all these novels out, and when you're jumping from IP to IP to IP and doing different stuff in different places, it is kind of difficult to remember your own stuff, let alone other authors. And Dave has brought it all together. And for me, writing stuff, I'm using that wiki all the time. So go get stuck in. Go have a look at it.
Yeah, and if you want to help out, you definitely can. We have a Discord as well under the community tabs. You can click Discord. And unfortunately, I've disabled signing up for it because every time I enable free sign-up so anyone can sign up, it keeps on getting doxed by a Russian IP. And there ends up being thousands of fake pages and user accounts that I need to delete. That takes me an entire day. So at the moment, there's no sign-ups, but I can create your account if you join the Discord and just reach out to me. And it has been doxed about 3 times now, and it's taken me a long time to fix.
We appreciate all your hard work, truly.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all you guys do as well. You guys, how open you guys have been in all the writers of the Mantic books. I think I've spoken to every single one now, apart from probably a couple. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of I don't know how this got pieced together, but I've talked to a lot of the writers, and everyone has been so receptive. I think the first one I ever spoke to was actually Scott, who did the Broken Alliance books, and he told me a whole bunch of stuff. I even added the mother's name of Aaron into the wiki, which isn't actually stated in the book, so there is some stuff that I am gleaming. I try and keep everything on the wiki in more of a kind of scientific way, so you'll be able to replicate it if you want to. So you've got the source material, so there's not going to be anything that's just in the writer's heads or in anyone's heads. everything has to be written down in some kind of published book. So if you do want to help me out, reach out. But everyone has been so great and talking to me just about the books. You, Brandon, you, Mark, and same with who else? Ben Stoddard has been great as well. Clint has been great. I mean, it's been very surprising how open and how passionate all you are. Even though this IP, you really are third party people helping out the IP, but you guys treat the IP as it's kind of part of you, which is really refreshing and great to see as well.
Thank you, Dave. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. We will catch you in the next episode.
See ya.